Hi, Chris from Dynojet here. Today I'm going to demonstrate a Power Commander 5 install on this 2012 MV Agusta F4 1000. We're going to pull most of the bodywork off of this bike and the fuel tank and the airbox to install this. Before we roll this bike up on the lift, we're going to go ahead and pull these panels off the front inner fairing. We're going to need to be able to move the handlebars to get these panels out. Once we get these panels out, we'll roll the bike up onto the lift and keep going. Now that we're up on the lift, we can start removing the seats. We're going to pull these small panels off on both sides. Pull this panel off on both sides. We're going to start pulling the bodywork off of the tail. We'll go ahead and take this bracket off the rear of the fuel tank. Remove this bracket from both sides of the fuel tank. Now that the fuel tank is unbolted, we can lift it up and disconnect the fuel line and the electrical connector and the vent lines. Now that we've removed all of the quarter turn bolts, we can pull the mid fairing off the right hand side of the bike. We'll go ahead and do the same with the mid fairing on the left hand side. Now we can go ahead and remove the lower. The next thing we'll want to do is remove the airbox lid. We have 4 bolts at all 4 corners. After removing the 4 bolts, we can lift the lid up and off. So we'll go ahead and get started with the filter. We'll need to disconnect this vacuum line here. And we'll need to disconnect the fuel line for the secondary injectors. We'll unplug the secondary fuel rail here. We'll unclamp the airbox assembly on both sides here. And now we can lift the airbox out of place. This Power Commander will come included with a secondary fuel module. We'll need to have a secondary fuel module on this 8-injector motorcycle because in the stock ECU, it will shut the lower fuel injectors off at higher RPMs. Therefore, the secondary fuel module is required, so we'll have tunability throughout the entire RPM range. Before I go ahead and start routing the 2 harnesses, I'll go ahead and Velcro the 2 modules together. And I'll take the supplied CAN link cable and I'll plug one end into the secondary fuel module. I'll plug the other end into one of the expansion ports on the Power Commander module. And finally, I'll install a CAN termination plug. Now this is a very crucial step that's often overlooked, but it is essential that this be installed. So we're going to store the 2 modules underneath the passenger seat, and we'll route the 2 harnesses following along the right-hand side frame rail. We're going to secure the ground wire of the Power Commander harness to the negative terminal of the bike's battery. The first set of connections we'll come to is to the bike's crank position sensor connectors, and this connector pair is located just inside the frame on the right hand side of the bike. We'll just push in on the spring clip and disconnect that, and we'll plug the matching Power Commander connectors in line with the stock crank position sensor connectors. Next, we'll connect the Power Commander to the lower primary fuel injectors. We're going to connect the pair of Power Commander leads with orange colored wires in line with the number 1 primary fuel injector lead. The yellow pair of connectors will go in line with number 2. The green pair of connectors will go in line with number 3. And the blue pair will go in line with injector number 4. The last connection we'll come to is to our bike's throttle position sensor. And the TPS is located right here in the center of the throttle bodies. I've routed the harness underneath the primary fuel injector rail and up through to where I can unplug the stock TPS connector, and I'll plug the Power Commander in line with the TPS and the stock connector. Now that we've plugged the Power Commander in line with the TPS, we'll want to use the 2 small supplied zip ties to make sure that we tie the harness up so that it doesn't come into contact or interfere with any movement of the throttle blades. Now that we have the Power Commander plugged in line with the bike's throttle position sensor and we've tied up the harness so it doesn't interfere with the reinstallation of the airbox, we can go ahead and put the airbox back into place. Now that we have the airbox put back in place, instead of plugging the secondary fuel rail back in stock, we're going to plug in our secondary fuel module. And that's just one pair of connections. And the secondary fuel module also has a ground lug that will attach to this bolt here at the top of the engine case. After plugging in, we're going to want to secure our wiring. I recommend using at least 2 zip ties on the primary fuel rail. And then as the harness comes back to the tail, you can use the stock wire ties to secure it to the right side frame rail. And now that both of our harnesses are plugged in and secure, we can reassemble the bike.